Hello and welcome back to this Orbiter 2016 video series. I'm Tex and this is episode 4 of Journey to Saturn. In the previous episode we covered the Jupiter slingshot as well as the first major mid-course correction on our way out to Saturn. In this episode we will conduct a few minor mid-course corrections, go ahead and encounter Saturn, as well as complete the capture burn at Saturn. Now we won't make it to Titan in this episode because it did just prove to be a little too much to cover, so in the next episode we'll encounter Titan as well as rendezvous with Mav in Titan orbit, so some exciting times to come indeed. Before we begin, I'd just like to quickly mention that I recently released a new type of video for me. It is a documentary style video, of course, about Saturn, and it was inspired from this video series we're making here. The original idea was to create a short sequence to place in the middle of this episode where we sort of talk about Saturn and what we know about it. I mean, it makes sense to talk about the planet we're actually traveling to here, right? But as I did research and the project grew, I quickly began to realize that it deserved to be its own standalone video instead of sandwiched in between an episode here where fewer people would have an opportunity to see it. So I assume if you're here watching this video series, you've probably already seen it, but just in case you haven't, I'll put a card up at the top of the video that you can click on where you can go and watch that Saturn documentary. Please do check that out when you get a moment. I would love to hear what you guys think, seeing as this is a new type of video for me to make. And if you enjoyed it, also share it on the internet. I would love for other people to have an opportunity to see it and maybe fall in love with space as much as we do. I mean, the more people we can get interested in space can only be a good thing, right? But as it turned out, I really enjoyed making the video. It was a lot of fun researching it and learning new things I didn't already know, and putting the whole video together was just quite enjoyable. So I was thinking maybe I would make some more videos like that, perhaps about the moons of Saturn as we travel to them throughout this video series. Could be interesting. But maybe I'll branch out and make other types of videos like that about other planets in the solar system. Space or spaceflight in general could also be fun. Let me know what you guys think, of course, and if you have any ideas of your own about documentary type of videos, space related, that you'd like to see, post in the comments below or hit me up on social media. I'd love to hear from you, and I always appreciate your feedback. So I apologize for the rather long intro now, but without further ado, let's go ahead and get started with this episode. Alright, so we are here on our way to Saturn. PET has about halved since we last set up the course correction burn, and we had talked about getting the orbital period, or getting our periapsis time to periapsis anyways, to be a multiple of Titan's orbital period, and we did that in the last episode. And then we talked about waiting until the time to periapsis basically halved, and then we would repeat the same process again. So that's what we're doing. PET number has halved, so first thing we're going to do is just adjust our periapsis by bringing it down to 3,000 kilometers. That does fluctuate quite a lot this far out from Saturn. You see the G contribution for Saturn is actually only at 0.01 at the moment, so we're still a long ways out. But nonetheless, we will go ahead and make sure PEA is back down to 3,000 kilometers. And also, just as important, we want to make sure that line of nodes is sitting directly over our periapsis. Once we do that, we'll bring up the protractor again, double check the angle with Titan, and just make sure that our PET is in fact a multiple of Titan's orbital period. Okay, so our periapsis looks good, line of nodes looks good. Just zooming out, we're going to target Titan here. Just make sure we know which orbit Titan is at, and where Titan actually is located, I should say. So I've opened the protractor. Let's go ahead and move the protractor directly over the center of Saturn. So sort of like this, we want the middle part of the protractor to be in the center of Saturn, and we're going to rotate it around so it lays over that line of nodes in our periapsis. Again, making sure that 0 degrees is at our periapsis. So we're going to move our mouse up to where Titan is, and we can see that it's not quite 111.6 degrees. So let's move our mouse up to where it is 111.6 degrees, or as close as we can get to it. somewhere like that, and let's time accelerate until Titan gets directly over that point. Okay, that's good. Now we can close the protractor and let's just figure out the orbital period here. So if we open the calculator and we take our current PET, 17.92, and divide that by Titan's orbital period, 1.378, that is 13 exactly. So that is a multiple of Titan's orbital period. Fantastic. That means we need no course corrections at this point in time other than adjusting the periapsis and the line of nodes as we have already done. So we can go ahead and time accelerate again, and we'll wait until PET basically halves from where it is now. Okay, so I've cut forward in time just a bit. You can see PET is about half of what it was before. And of course, once again, the first thing I'm going to do is just adjust our periapsis, bring that back down to 3,000 kilometers, and put the line of nodes directly over our periapsis. And then the next thing we're going to do is we're just going to make sure that Titan is about where it should be. I don't think I'm going to open the protractor again for this because I know about where Titan should be, close enough for the angle of 111.6 degrees. Actually, a good reference in this case, it worked out that the line going through the center of Saturn, the straight line going through the center of Saturn, that represents Saturn's orbit around the Sun. And Titan should be pretty close to that line. I don't think it was right over it, but it was pretty close to it. So that's going to be a close enough reference for us. I think we won't need to open the protractor again. But of course, if you wanted to be super accurate, you could do that every time. So Titan is actually not at that angle just yet. So what I'm going to do is just time accelerate. Titan's basically on the other side of Saturn from where it needs to be. So we're just going to time accelerate until Titan moves over to the angle that we calculated, which was again 111.6 degrees off from our periapsis. So you can see Titan is about there now, and somewhere right about there. That was according to the protractor where 111.6 was. So now that Titan is at that angle, let's again use the calculator to double check that our PET is a multiple of Titan's orbital period, so 8.263 divided by 1.378, and that gives us 5.996. So it's a little bit off. We could go ahead and correct that. So rounding up to 6, take 6 times Titan's orbital period gives us 8.268. So technically our PET right now should be 8.268. That means we should probably slow down a little bit. It's probably close enough we don't need to adjust it, but we'll go ahead and mess around with this for a minute. Now while I'm doing that, I just wanted to highlight a comment that a user by the name of Mont Blanc left on my video episode 0. And it was really a really good comment that explained why it is important for us to have that line of nodes at periapsis, and the importance of how that affects our encounter at Titan. So basically, what he said is an important step in the process is to make sure that prior to arrival at Saturn, you rotate your orbital plane with respect to Saturn so that the line of apsides of your approach orbit more or less coincides with the line of nodes of Titan's orbital plane with relation to your orbital plane. So this means that you will execute the capture burn at your periapsis by Saturn as you pass through the line of nodes. And after that burn, we will not be in plane with Titan, but if we get the timing right, we'll reach our apoapsis as we pass through the line of nodes and thus have an encounter with Titan. And he goes on to say that this plane rotation maneuver is best carried out some distance from Saturn, really just to keep the maneuver costs low. And we did do that. We're still a long ways from Saturn, but his explanation was more technical than probably mine, and I think that it really highlights, what's going on here and the importance of swinging that line of nodes over periapsis and the importance of getting the timing right as we're doing right now once again, because by making sure that our PET is a multiple of Titan's orbital period, that ensures that we get that timing right. So all of these things really have to come together to ensure that we minimize how much delta V we're going to need to do to both get captured by Saturn and encounter Titan, all sort of together, if you will. So I thought that was a really good explanation, so I just wanted to highlight his comment. But basically, we're continuing with our course corrections here. I'm adjusting. I'm making another adjustment to PET, just trying to get it as close to a multiple as we can. Quite frankly, I believe that everything so far has been close enough to a multiple. Everything's pretty much rounded up to a multiple anyways, and we're not talking about a small rock here, like maybe Phobos or something, so I'm sure that it was close enough that we would have still had an encounter with Titan. But I'm probably just trying to split atoms here by getting, the PET exactly at a multiple of Titan's orbital period each time. I'm not sure how many more times I will do that, but we will certainly continue forward as PET comes down. We'll continue adjusting our periapsis altitude, because we want to make sure that that definitely is at 3,000 kilometers in altitude, and also that line of node sits right on periapsis. So we're just continuing to accelerate here. Our PET is coming down. You can see Titan is coming back around to our angle. We may check PET again here this time just to make sure, but I don't think it's going to be worth making any more adjustments. We'll just double check. So Titan's getting to our angle of 111.6 there. Let's just double check PET divided by Titan's orbital period. So 2.750 for our PET divided by 1.378. That's 1.995. I mean, again, it rounds up to 2. That's close enough. I'm not going to adjust that again. So just zooming in, let's go ahead and adjust our periapsis. Once again, it's not quite at 3,000 kilometers. So we're just going to keep doing this until we fall within Saturn's strong SOI, and our periapsis should not be fluctuating as much anymore. So we won't have to be making these adjustments anymore. But I mean, so far at this point, after the initial course correction, all of these adjustments have been very minor, using just a little bit of linear RCS. So honestly, that looks fine right there. We're going to continue time accelerating forward, and probably get within Saturn's strong SOI here. And there it is. You can see we have fallen within Saturn's strong SOI. The G contribution on the orbit MFD is at 0.50. So our periapsis still looks good at 3,000 kilometers above the surface. And yeah, so we're basically encountering Saturn at this point. Why don't we go ahead and open up burn time, and let's just put in our delta V remaining here, 72,435 meters per second. We're going to put that in right here after MCC3. So we used 185 meters per second since our original course correction burn. We will put in delta V at encounter once we get closer to Saturn. And then also notice that I changed the last two lines to the Titan Moon orbital insertion and MAV rendezvous. That just made more sense for our particular situation. So yeah, we'll come back and enter in those delta velocity figures whenever we get to those points in the flight. So I think at this time, this is definitely a major highlight of the flight as we cruise down to Saturn. We are on course. There's really not much else we need to do. We might just make a few minor corrections to our periapsis as we coast down, just to make sure it stays around 3,000. But let's take some time and just enjoy the cinematic views of our encounter here at Saturn, and we'll come back when it's time to set up the capture burn. So I'll see you guys in just a bit. Wow, that is always just a stunning view. Saturn truly is the crown jewel of the solar system. So, man, I hope you guys enjoyed that cinematic sequence. That was really fun to make. But yeah, it's time to get down to business here and get our capture burn out of the way. So let's put in our delta V here at encounter at 72,341 meters per second remaining. We used a little bit, adjusting periapsis, coasting down, but not much at all. Yeah, so what we're going to do is I'm going to open up interplanetary, but first let me just start a little bit of rotation in here. We're going to, of course, turn retrograde, but we'll get a better view of Saturn too. So yeah, I'm going to open interplanetary, and you probably guessed it, the delta velocity program. There we go. Now what I'm going to do for time to ejection is put in roughly our time to periapsis, so let's just set that at 2,900 seconds. Hit projection, and let's go to DVF, and for this we're going to get that from our spreadsheet where we calculated the 2-burn solution. So if we look at the first burn at planet periapsis, that's 3,215 meters per second. So that's what we're going to put in for our burn here, our capture burn at Saturn periapsis. So we'll set that at, of course, negative 3215. Now that gives us a preliminary solution that we can use to tweak it. Now before I go any further, I'm just going to zoom in a little bit. Let's go back to TEJ, and I want to move those 2 blue lines between periapsis at Saturn. So the first blue line is where the burn begins, the first blue line on the left, that is, and the blue line on the right is where the burn ends. So we want to split that burn up, so half the burn is done before periapsis, the other half after. Now on the right side, I'm going to share the left side with the right with a map program, targeting Titan and selecting Titan so that we can see our periapsis and relative inclination at Titan. We'll turn on sphere of influence and the plan. So you can see actually with the plan on that we're actually lowering our apoapsis too much. It's coming down below the altitude of Titan's orbit around Saturn. But so I think what we'll need to do for now anyways is take some of that DVF out that we put in. So we would go plus on the DVF, and you'll see that our apoapsis is raising up over on the map program on the right side, and that looks better. It's roughly around Titan's orbit, but we can look at the periapsis number at Titan as well. We want to shoot for somewhere around 600 kilometers above the surface of Titan, and that's because it's out of Saturn. It's out of Titan's atmosphere. But also, more importantly, that's about the altitude that MAV is orbiting at, which we need to rendezvous with once we get to Titan. So what we're going to do is just play around with the variables. We're not going to adjust the date very much. We'll just fine-tune it just a little bit, just try and keep it right in between periapsis like that. But we'll use the other variables, probably delta velocity forward and maybe the inward here. And I want to just play around with these until I can get that periapsis down to about 600 kilometers above Titan's surface. But I also want to make sure that we're coming in prograde, so that means our relative inclination needs to be under 90 degrees. So as I time accelerate here, get a little closer to the burn, we're about 2,400 seconds from the burn. And one thing that you might notice is I'm not changing anything. Yet the periapsis at Titan is changing on its own, so is the relative inclination. So both Dimitri and I were really scratching our heads on this. We couldn't figure out why that was happening. He was saying that it really shouldn't be happening like that. And it didn't matter if we used the delta velocity program or the target intercept program. Either way, it was constantly changing. So that makes setting up a solution obviously pretty difficult, because the whole idea behind this is we find a solution with a periapsis at our target and do the burn, and you know, it usually comes out pretty accurate. But for whatever reason here at Saturn, we tried it in both Orbiter 2016 and 2010, we had the same problem. So in any case, what I'm going to have to do here is just try to play around with the variables and get the periapsis where I want it. But probably what we'll have to do is get a little closer to the burn and maybe overshoot where we want the periapsis, anticipating that it will fall down to 600 kilometers during the time that we conduct the burn. Now, it's really just going to be sort of Buck Rogers using IMFD in a sense, because it's we're not, I just don't know a better way to do it, unfortunately. But I think this is still going to be the best way to minimize our DV expenditure so that we can conduct the Saturn capture burn and also get our encounter set up over at Titan. So you can see actually the periapsis at Titan is about 880 kilometers and it's climbing, and I'm not changing anything. So it's pretty close to where we want it, but like I said, it's changing on its own. We're about a little over 1,000 seconds from the burn. So let's just time accelerate here and maybe just get oriented roughly in the right direction before we get too far ahead. Just change our view over here, just pan over so we can watch Saturn as we coast down to the night side here. But yeah, let me just tweak DVF, bring periapsis back down. Okay, so we're coming in prograde and overshooting periapsis a little bit. There's 1,500 kilometers and it's falling on its own toward our target at 600 kilometers. But it's going to get there long before we reach the burn. We're still 932.31 seconds from the burn, and just putting in some more DV inward here. Just trying to really guess how much to overshoot this. So I think, I don't know, I think probably what we're going to have to do is just get it set as good as we can, probably time accelerate here in a minute, get a little closer to the burn because we're still quite a ways out here. So periapsis is looking good. We're just watching it come down now on its own. I wonder if I target the equator and no, I mean to reference Titan. Okay, so we can see our periapsis with the plan up at Titan and it's still changing on its own there, so that didn't make a difference. I thought maybe if I reference Titan instead of targeting Titan on the map program that maybe I would get something more accurate, but that didn't work out. So we'll go back to referencing Saturn and targeting Titan. And yeah, I mean, unfortunately, I just don't know a better way to do this. So, I mean, periapsis, every time we get it close to where we want it, look how quickly it changes. It's changing like insanely fast there. So let's just go ahead and time accelerate and get much closer to the burn. And I guess we'll just have to get it set up as close as we can. Overshooting it, like I said, just get ourselves, make sure we're oriented pretty much for the burn. Okay, so it's close enough, and we're 150 seconds from the burn. So let's just toy around with the periapsis here. Okay, so we were retrograde. We went through Titan, coming out on the other side. So now we're prograde. Periapsis is at 1,600 kilometers and falling on its own, and it's getting down too close to 600 kilometers too quickly based on our time to the burn. Yeah, that really sucks. So overshooting it again, there's 2,200 kilometers. We are still prograde. Relative inclination looks good. Okay, so periapsis is at 2,000 kilometers right now and falling. I'm just going to go with that. I don't think that's going to be good enough, though. You can see periapsis is falling quickly. Again, we wanted it to be at 600 kilometers, but we're still just 50 seconds from the burn, time accelerating, and we've hit auto burn. So we're just going to let IMFD do its thing here, because otherwise I'm going to sit here just guessing at this all day long. So we'll just see how bad this is. I'm quite sure that we're going to have to clean up the burn ourselves here. So I turned off the plan. We'll see things in real time over on the right side on the map program as IMFD conducts the auto burn here. We should be able to see once we're captured by Saturn the display on the map program will change. There it goes. We are now captured by Saturn. And you can see our apoapsis quickly coming down. Okay, so that's looking good. The auto burn is still working at 10 times acceleration here. Okay, now we're at normal time, just about 1 second, less than a second left for the burn. And I can already tell you it's not going to be enough. All right, look how high our periapsis is at Titan. It was 115 kilometers above the surface of Titan. So let's continue burning and bring periapsis down, because it's not changing in real time, so we can just go ahead and set it here. So it just IMFD didn't burn long enough.
Translation.
So we're retrograde. Let's keep burning and go through Titan. Okay, we went through the center of Titan. We've come out the other side using linear RCS, and there we go. So periapsis is at 603 kilometers above the surface of Titan, and our relative inclination is 41.2 degrees. So we're coming in prograde, and altitude above Titan looks fine. So I've unshared the MFD. On the left side, I'm going to use the map program with Titan targeted, but on the right side, I'm actually going to reference Titan, and I've got the equator targeted. So we're going to use the right side actually to do a course correction, but I guess we're not actually going to cover that in this episode because it was just getting too long. So let's open burn time though, and we have 69,106 meters per second remaining. So we're going to pop that in right here after the capture burn at Saturn. So we used 3,235 meters per second, and what did we calculate? 3,215. So what, we used 20 meters per second more. Yeah, I guess in the grand scheme of things, maybe that's not so bad, considering that was a little bit of Buck Rogers' solution set up there. But there you go. I mean, we're captured by Saturn, and we have a nice close encounter over at Titan. So not bad. I mean, if anybody happens to know why that's occurring, please do leave comments below. Like I said, both Dimitri and I were scratching our heads on that, trying to figure out why that was happening. So in any case, we're on our way. We're on the night side of Saturn, and that looks spectacular. You can see the rings of Saturn illuminated by the sun. Even though we're over here on the night side, it's still providing us with some views. So that's just always awesome to see. And I believe, as of recording this video, Cassini died just a couple of days ago. So rest in peace, Cassini. We will definitely all miss you. A big thanks and congratulations to all of the people that worked on that mission so hard over the years. So it's sort of poetic, maybe ironic, I don't know, that we are now here at Saturn picking up the torch, so to speak, on our manned mission to Saturn. So very, very cool as Saturn comes into view here. Gosh, that is just always so awesome to look at. I'm just going to rotate over a little bit so that we're looking sort of right at Saturn as we coast out away from it and just enjoy the views. This is just spectacular. Just gonna do a quick save for you guys here if you want to pick up from this point in my scenario pack. But yeah, that's gonna wrap up this episode as we drift away a little bit from Saturn here. In the next episode, we're gonna do a course correction for Titan, and then of course we need to conduct the orbital insertion burn at Titan. But more importantly, we need to rendezvous with Mav. So some interesting things that we will be doing in the next episode. But listen, guys, I really appreciate you following the series. It's been a lot of fun. Be sure and like the video, leave me comments, and subscribe for updates if you're interested in my videos. And yeah, hope you guys are all doing really well. Once again, thanks for watching, and take care. Until the next episode, we'll see you then.